All right, my friends, hang on for a wild ride. So this one is called Fortunately the Milk. It is a chapter book, so we'll see. Maybe I'll break it up into a couple of videos. So let's call this part one, just in case I do end up breaking it up into videos. The illustrations for this are by Scotty Young. They are ink drawings, so there's no color, but they are some of my favorites. They're so sweet. I love these drawings. They remind me a little bit of Quentin Blake, the guy who draws the illustrations for a lot of the Roald Dahl books, like Matilda and James and the Giant Peach. They remind me a little bit of those. Okay, so here's Fortunately the Milk by Neil Gaiman. There was only orange juice in the fridge. Nothing else that you could put on cereal unless you think ketchup or mayonnaise or pickle juice would be nice on Tostios, which I do not. And neither did my little sister, although she's eaten some pretty weird things in her day, like mushrooms and milk. Oh, like mushrooms and chocolate, sorry. No milk, said my sister. Nope, I said, looking behind the jam in the fridge, just in case. None at all. She did not actually like eating them. I had not actually told her that there were mushrooms inside the chocolate. It was an experiment. That's a footnote. Every once in a while you get a little, see this right here is a footnote. And so right next to the word chocolate, there's an asterisk, a little star, and that means there's a footnote explaining a little more. So the brother played a trick on her and didn't tell her there were mushrooms in the chocolate before she ate them. Our mom had gone off to a conference. She was presenting a paper on lizards. Before she went, she reminded us of the important things that had happened while she was away, that had to happen while she was away. Brody, please. My dad was reading the paper. I do not think he pays a lot of attention to the world while he is reading the paper. Did you hear me? Asked my mom, who was suspicious. What did I say? Do not forget to take the kids to orchestra practice on Saturday. It's violin on Wednesday night. You've frozen a dinner for each night you've away and labeled them. The spare house key is with the Nicholsons. The plumber will be here on Monday morning. And do not use or flush the upstairs toilet until he's been. Feed the goldfish. You love us, and you'll be back on Thursday, said my father. I think my mom was surprised. Yes, that's right, she said. She kissed us all, and then she said, oh, and we're almost out of milk. You'll need to pick some up. Mom, Dad. After she went away, my dad had a cup of tea. There was still some milk left. We defrosted meal number 1, but we made a bit of a mess of things, and so we went to the Indian restaurant. Before we went to sleep, Dad made us mugs of hot chocolate to make up for the whole missing of Mom. That was last night. Brody, please take your car off of the table. You're making way too much noise. Now Dad came in. Eat your cereal, he said. Remember, it's orchestra practice this afternoon. We can't eat our cereal, said my sister sadly. I don't see why not, said my father. We've got plenty of cereal. There's Tostios, there's muesli, we have bowls, we have spoons. Spoons are excellent, sort of like forks, only not as stabby. No milk, I said. No milk, said my sister. I watched my dad think about this. He looked like he was going to suggest that we have something for breakfast that you do not need milk for, like sausages. But then he looked like he remembered that without milk, he couldn't have his tea. And he had his no tea face on. You poor children, he said. I will walk down to the shop on the corner and I will get milk. Thank you, said my sister. Not the fat-free kind, I told him. That stuff tastes like water. Right, said my dad. Not the fat-free kind. He went out. I poured some Tostios in a bowl, and I stared at them. I waited. His sister practicing her violin, and there he is with his Tostios waiting. How long has it been? Asked my sister. Ages, I said. I thought so, said my little sister. We drank orange juice. My sister practiced her violin. I suggested that she stop playing her violin, and she did. My sister makes faces at me. How long has it been now? She asked. Ages and ages, I told her. What happens if he never comes back? She asked. I suppose we eat the pickles, I said. You can't eat pickles for breakfast, said my sister. And I don't like pickles at any time. What if something awful has happened to him? Mom would blame us. I expect he just ran into one of his friends at the corner shop, I said. And they got to talking and lost track of time. I ate a dry Tostio as an experiment. It was sort of okay, but not as good as in milk. There was a thump and a bang at the front door, and my father came in. Where have you been all this time? Asked my sister. Ah, said my father. Yes, well, funny you should ask me that. You ran into someone you knew and you lost track of time. I bought the milk, said my father. And I did indeed say a brief hello to Mr. Ronson from over the road who was buying a paper. I walked out of the corner shop and I heard something odd that seemed to be coming from above me. It was a noise like this. Thum, looked up and I saw a huge silver disc hovering in the air above Marshall Road. Hello, I said to myself, that's not something you see every day. And then something odd happened. That wasn't odd, I asked. Well, something odder, said my father. The odd thing was the beam of light that came out of the disc. A glittery, shimmery beam of light that was visible even in the daylight. And the next thing I knew, I was being sucked up into the disc. Fortunately, I had put the milk into my coat pocket, and the deck of the disc was metal. It was as big as a playing field, or bigger. And there he is being sucked up. Fortunately, he had put the milk into his coat pocket. We have come to your planet from a world very far away, said the people in the disc. I call them people, but they were a bit green and rather globby, and they looked very grumpy indeed. Now, as a representative of your species, we demand that you give us ownership of the whole planet. We are going to remodel it. I jolly well won't, I said. Then, it said, we will bring all your enemies here and have them make you miserable until you agree to sign this planet over to us. I was going to point out to them that I didn't have any enemies when I noticed a large metal door with emergency exit, do not open this for any reason, this means you on it. I opened the door. Don't do that, said the green globby person. You'll leave the space-time continuum in. But it was too late. I had already pushed open the door and I jumped. I was falling. Fortunately, I kept tight hold of the milk, so when I splashed into the sea, I didn't lose it. What was that? Said a woman's voice. A big fish? A mermaid? Or was it a spy? I wanted to say that I wasn't any of those things, but my mouth was full of seawater. I felt myself being hauled up onto the deck of a little ship. There were a number of men and women on the deck, and they all looked very cross. Who be ye, landlubber? Said the woman, who had a big hat on her head and a parrot on her shoulder. He's a spy, a walrus in a coat, a new kind of mermaid with legs, said the men. What are you doing here? Said the woman. Well, I said, I just set out on the corner shop for some milk for my children's breakfast and for my tea. The next thing I knew, he's lying, your majesty. She pulled out her cutlass. You dare lie to the queen of the pirates? Fortunately, I kept tight hold of the milk, and now I pointed to it. If I did not go to the corner shop to fetch the milk, I asked them, then where did this milk come from? At this, the pirates were completely speechless. Now, I said, if you could let me off somewhere near my destination, I would be much obliged to you. And where would that happen to be? Said the queen of the pirates. On the corner of Marshall Road and Fletcher Lane, I said. My children are waiting there for the breakfast. You're on a pirate ship now, my fine bucko, said the pirate queen, and you don't get dropped off anywhere. There are only two choices. You can join my pirate crew or refuse to join, and we will slit your cowardly throat, and you will go to the bottom of the sea where you will feed the fishes. What about walking the plank? I asked. Never heard of it, said the pirates. Walking the plank, I said. It's what proper pirates do. Look, I'll show you. Do you have a plank anywhere? It took some looking, but we found a plank, and I showed the pirates where to put it. We discussed nailing it down, but the pirate queen decided it was safer to just have the two fattest pirates sit on the end of it. Why exactly do you want to walk the plank? Asked the pirate queen. I edged out onto the plank. The blue Caribbean water splashed gently beneath me. Well, I said, I've seen lots of stories with pirates in them, and it seems to me that if I'm going to be rescued... At this, the pirates started to laugh so hard their stomachs wobbled, and the parrot took off in the air in amazement. Rescue, they said. There's no rescue out here. We're in the middle of the sea. Nevertheless, I told them, if you're going to be rescued, it will always be while walking the plank. Which we don't do, said the pirate queen. Here, have a Spanish doubloon and come and join us on our piratical adventures. It's 18th century, she added, and there's always room for a bright, enthusiastic pirate. I caught the doubloon. I almost wish I could, I told her, but I have children, and they need their breakfast. Then you must die! Walk the plank! I edged out to the end of the plank. Sharks were circling, so were piranhas, and this was where I interrupted my dad for the first time. Hang on, I said. Piranhas are a freshwater fish. What were they doing in the sea? You're right, said my father. The piranhas were later. Right. So, I was out at the end of the plank facing certain death when the rope ladder hit my shoulder and a deep booming voice shouted, Quickly, climb up the rope ladder! I I needed no more encouragement than this, and I grabbed the rope ladder with both hands. Fortunately, the milk was pushed deep into the pocket of my coat. The pirates hurled insults at me and even discharged pistols, but neither insults nor pistol shot found their targets, and I soon made it to the top of the rope ladder. I've never been in a basket of a hot air balloon before. It was very peaceful up there. The person in the balloon basket said, "I hope you don't mind, but it looked like you were having problems down there." I said, "You're a stegosaurus." "I am an inventor," he said. "I have invented the thing we are traveling in, which I call Professor Steg's floaty ball person carrier." "I call it a balloon," I said. "Professor Steg's floaty ball carrier is the original name," he said. "And right now we are 150 million years in the future." "Actually," I said, "we are about 300 years in the past." "Do you like hard, wet, hairy, white crunchers?" he asked. "Coconuts?" I guessed. "I named them first," said Professor Steg, and he picked up a coconut from the basket and ate it, shell and all, just as you and I might crunch toast. He showed me his time machine. He was very proud of it. It was a large cardboard box with several pebbles on it and stones stuck to the side. There was also a large red button. I looked at the stones. "Hang on," I said. "Those are diamonds and sapphires and rubies." "Actually," he said, "I call them special shiny clear stones, special shiny bluey stones, and, special shiny red stones?" I suggested. "Indeed," he said. "I called them that when I was inventing my really good moves around in a time machine 150 million years ago." "Well," I told him, "it was very lucky for me that you turned up when you did and rescued me. I am slightly lost in space and time right now, and I need to get home in order to make sure my children get milk for their breakfast." I showed it to him. "This is the milk. Although I expect that 150 million years ago you called it wet, white, drinky stuff." "Dinosaurs are reptiles, sir," said Professor Steg. "We do not go in for milk." "Do you go in for breakfast cereal?" I asked. "Of course," he said. "Dinosaurs love breakfast cereal, especially the kind with nuts in." "What do you have on your breakfast cereal?" I asked. "Orange juice, mostly, or we just eat it dry. But I shall put this in my book. In the distant future, small mammals put milk on their breakfast cereal. I shall write a wonderful book when I return to the present." "Actually," I said, "I think this is definitely the past. It has pirates in it." "It's the future," he said. "All the dinosaurs have gone off to the stars, leaving the world to the mammals." "I wonder where you all went," I said. "The stars," he told me. "That is where we all have gone." "So," I said, "can you take me home?" "Well," he said, "yes and no." "What does that mean?" "Yes, I would love to take you home. Nothing would make me happier. No, I cannot take you home. In all honesty, I do not believe that I can take me home. My time machine is being temperamental. I need a special shiny greeny stone. I have pressed that button many times, but nothing happens." "Button? Didn't you mean the big red flat pressy thing?" I asked. "I most certainly do not. It is a button. I named it after my Aunt Button." "Can you press it?" "If you wish." I pressed the button. The sun shot around the sky started to flicker into nights and into days, and the balloon began to rock and lurch and zoom around like an angry fly. I held on to the ropes as hard as I could. Fortunately, the milk was still keeping tight. I was still keeping tight hold of the milk in my right hand. Sorry, my friends. When we stopped being blown all across the sky, it was night, and according to Professor Steg, we had only gone back 100,000 years. The moon was nearly full. "I am even further from my children and our breakfast," I said. "You have your milk," he said. "Where there is milk, there is hope. Ah, over there. That looks like a perfect landing platform for time-traveling scientists in a floaty ball person carrier." We landed on the platform and got out. The platform stuck out of the jungle and the flaming torches on either side of it, and there were people standing on it with very black hair and sharp stone knives. "Is this a balloon landing platform?" I asked the people. "It is not," said the fat man. It is our temple. We had a very bad harvest last year. We just asked the gods to send us a sacrifice to make sure this year's harvest is better. When you floated down in that thing with your monster. Thank you, by the way, said a little thin man. I was going to be the sacrifice if no one else turned up. Much obliged. So now we will sacrifice you and your monster. But my children are waiting for their breakfast, I said. Look, I held up the milk. Why did they all just fall to their knees? Asked Professor Steg. Is this usual hairless mammal behavior? Perhaps I should hold up some hard, hairy, wet, white crunchers and see what happens. Coconuts, I told him. They are called coconuts. What is that thing you are holding? The fat man asked. Milk, I said. Milk, they exclaimed. They prostrated themselves on the ground. That means they laid themselves flat on their faces on the ground, prostrated. We have a prophecy, said the fat man, that a man and a spiny-backed monster descend from the skies in a round floaty thing. Floaty ball person carrier. Yes, one of those. We were told that when that happened, if the man held up milk, then we were not to sacrifice them. We were meant to take them to the volcano and give them as a present the green jewel that is called the Eye of Splod. Splod? He is the god of the people with short, funny names. It is, I said, a remarkably specific sort of prophecy. When did you receive it? Last Wednesday, said the fat man proudly. The priest of Splod was woken by the light, by a voice whispering from the heavens, and when we went down to see who it was, there was nobody there. He was sleeping on top of a temple, and nobody else could have been up there with him. So it must have been either Splod himself talking, or one of the angelic messengers. We walked down together to the jungle path, Professor Steg carrying the rope in his mouth that led up to the balloon, and he dragged the balloon along after half an hour. We reached the volcano. It was not a very big volcano. There were wisps of smoke coming from the top of it. The side of the volcano, there was a carving of a big scary face with one eye in the middle of its forehead. The eye was the biggest emerald I had ever seen. A special shiny greeny stone, said Professor Steg with his mouth full of rope. The fat man clambered up the side of the volcano. It is a good thing that Splod himself told us to give you the Eye of Splod, said the little thin man who had narrowly avoided being sacrificed. Because there is another prophecy that the Eye of Splod is ever removed, great Splod will awaken and spread burning destruction across the land. Here you go, said the fat man. He handed us the emerald. Professor Steg nipped up the rope ladder into the balloon's gondola and began to install the emerald into the time machine. Hang on! He was Stegosaurus! Yes. Then how could he nip up a rope ladder? He was, said my father, a large Stegosaurus, but very light on his feet. There are fat people who are excellent dancers. Are there any ponies in this? Asked my sister. I thought there would be ponies by now. So they interrupted the story again. Remember, it's their father telling the story about where he was all that time while he was going to get the milk. You got to remember that, because the story gets crazy and a little hard, but it's all going to tie together at the end. Don't worry. I was standing on the ground holding on to the rope ladder when the ground shook and a very small volcano began to belch smoke and lava. Splod is angry, shouted the little thin man. He wants his eye back. There was a rushing wind and the balloon jerked me up through the air high above the splurting lava. Unfortunately, I dropped the milk. I wasn't holding on to it tightly enough. It landed on the top of Splod's head. Professor Steg hauled the rope ladder up with his tail. I've lost the milk, I told him. That's not good, he admitted. But I know where it is. It's on top of Splod's head, on the side of the volcano, Professor Steg said. Good Splod! What on earth is that? Before our eyes, another balloon just like ours appeared, over by the volcano, and a man hurried down the rope ladder, and he placed a large emerald in Splod's eye, and he picked up the milk from Splod's head, and then he ran up the ladder, and the balloon vanished. The very small volcano stopped erupting as suddenly as if it had been turned off. That was a bit peculiar, wasn't it? Said the professor. It was, I agreed, gloom and despair and despondency overcoming me. That man in the balloon just stole my milk. We are lost in the past with jungles and pirates and volcanoes. No, I'll never get home. My children will never have breakfast. We are doomed to float forever around this dusty air of the past in a hot air balloon. It is not a balloon, said Professor Steg. It is a floaty ball person carrier.
what nonsense you do talk. Now, I think that should do the trick.
He just finished attaching the emerald to the box using string mostly, but also sticky tape, and then he pushed the red button. Where are we going? I asked. It seemed like the sun was zooming across the sky as if the nights were following days in a flickering strobe.
To the far, far future,
said Professor Stegg. The machine stopped. We were hanging in the air above the grassy plain when a very small grey mountain beneath us.
There, said Professor Stegg. It is now an extinct volcano. But look!
On the side of the extinct volcano was carved the face of Splod, still recognizable even though it was much eroded by time and the weather. In a single eye was a huge green emerald, a perfect twin to the one we had attached to the time machine.
Right, said Professor Stegg. Grab me that special shiny greeny stone.
I went over the side of the gondola and down the rope ladder. I pulled the emerald out of the eye socket. Below me on the plain, a number of brightly colored ponies were gathered, and when I picked up the emerald, one of them shouted up at me, "You must be the man without the milk! We've heard all about you in our tales!" "Why are you a pink pony with the palest blue star on your side?" I asked. "I know," said the pony with a sigh. "It's what everybody's wearing these days. Pale blue stars are so last year." Professor Stegg leaned over the side of the balloon's basket.
Hurry up, he called. If the volcano is going to go off, it will do it at any moment.
The volcano made a noise like a huge burp, and the middle of it collapsed into itself. "We thought it would do that," said the green pony with the sparkling mane. "There was a prophecy, I suppose," I said. "No, we're just very clever." All the ponies nodded. They were all very clever ponies. "I'm so glad there were ponies," said my sister. I got back into the balloon basket. Professor Stegg unhooked the first emerald from his time machine and replaced it with the one that I had just taken from the weathered face of Splod in the future.
"Do not, whatever else you might do," said the professor, "touch these two stones together."
"Why not?"
"Because, according to my calculations, if the same object from two different times touches itself, one of two things will happen. Either the universe will cease to exist, or three remarkable dwarves will dance through the streets with flower pots on their heads."
"That sounds astonishingly specific," I said.
"I know, but it is science, and it is much more probable that the universe will end."
"I thought it would be," I said.
"You look so sad," Professor Stegg told me.
"I am. It's the milk. My children are breakfastless."
"The milk," said Professor Stegg. "Of course."
And with that, Professor Stegg pressed the red button with his heavily armored tail. There was a zoom, a twop, and a thwang, and we were hurtling through the cosmic void, and then it was dark. Very dark.
"Oops," said Professor Stegg. "Overshot a little. Only by a week, though. Hold on."
Professor Stegg leaned over the side of the basket.
"Excuse me," he said. "Is there anyone around?"
"Only me," said a very surprised-sounding voice from below us. "The priest of Splod. Who is that up in the sky? Is it a bird? You do not sound like a bird."
"I am not a bird," said Professor Stegg. "I am a marvelous yet mysterious and prophetic voice telling you a mighty prophecy. So mighty that, very mighty indeed. Listen. When a huge and good-looking spiny-backed individual—"
"Monster," I told him.
The prophecy said a monster. "Accompanied by a scrawny human being of revolting experience," said Professor Stegg.
Mom. That was not necessary.
Okay. "Lands in a floaty ball person carrier. You must not sacrifice them. You must instead take them to the volcano and give them the Eye of Splod. And then this shall be the way that you shall know them. The human being will hold up some milk."
"Is that the prophecy?" said the voice.
"Yes."
"Is there anything about crops in it?"
"I'm afraid not."
"Oh, well, thank you anyway, prophetic and mysterious voice from the air." I pressed the red button. Daylight. We were in the middle of a very familiar volcanic eruption. "Quickly," I said, "give me the emerald." A little way away, I could see a balloon being blown through the sky while fire and ash swept around it by the wind. I could see me in the balloon, standing next to Professor Stegg with my mouth open. I looked miserable. Professor Stegg, my Professor Stegg, gave me the emerald. I raced down the rope ladder, placed the emerald back in the face's eye, and then as the volcano stopped erupting, I looked around for the milk. I knew it had landed on Splod's head when it fell. Fortunately, the milk had fallen into a small drift of volcanic ash and was unharmed. I picked it up, brushed it off, and started back up the balloon ladder. Professor Stegg pressed the button, and the sky went dark. We're going to stop there because that's already 25 minutes. We'll read more next week.